go anywhere that allows or challenges you not to do your own thinking. It's dangerous to take your brain off even when you come to church. It's not good for you to not be able to be thinking in church and challenged to think in church. Why? Because if you're not thinking, then you're not growing. Here is the value. We are in control of our own thinking. We are equipped to think critically and rationally. We are gifted to read and contemplate, analyze, meditate, process, dissect, and invest the validity of the information to which we receive. We are not some people who are waiting on somebody to push a button to help us think. We are people who have been created with the beauty that God has given each and every one of us to be able to use our minds, because our minds can be a beautiful thing. Look at the genius of the human mind. They are now discovering that black people or black engineers, both men and women, have been in the back of some of the most amazing accomplishments that have ever been accomplished in this United States of America and across this world, and somebody else always steals our good ideas. I love music, but ain't nobody got no funk like we got it. I love our Christian music. I love our gospel music. But excuse me for being pro-black this morning, but can't nobody give us the gospel music like we can sing it. I should have heard somebody say amen somewhere. I mean, when you look across the spectrum of the musicality and the blues and the spirituals that African American people have used to make it through some tough times, everybody can't sing it like we sang it. Everybody don't have what I call our funk. Everybody can't do what we do because our music, our musicality, our rhythm, our heartbeat is based upon our survival mechanisms from our ancestors. Nobody has been disconnected and disfigured like African people of the African diaspora. And even though they split our ancestors up based upon the region to which they came from, they had what was called some drum beats, or what I call modern day. They had some funk that the white folk did not understand what was being communicated. I wish I had somebody here. That's why we must always embrace our heritage and not always try to hide who we are so we can fit in with other people. We need to always stand up for who we are. We ain't always got to open up our mouths, but we need to make sure we don't cower down when we show up. Did you know that your presence is still a threat to the establishment and the empire? Did you know that you still cause fear when you stand up for what is right and what has been given to you by the organization and the empire, and they still have a problem with you recognizing that you are somebody in the eyes of God? But here is the problem. The tension comes in when we don't live according to the way we're supposed to think. When we examine some of the actions in life, we must raise the question, what were you thinking? My daddy used to put it this way, Brother Allen, boy, you done lost your ever-loving mind. Think about it. What kind of thinking went into developing a systemic way of keeping racism alive? What kind of thinking went into some black police officers in Memphis who decided that the brother's life wasn't as valuable as theirs, and they used their blue badge privilege to understand that even though you represent the empire is still going to persecute you because now you're making them look bad. What kind of thinking went into politicians a few blocks away from our church who have decided that free lunching funding to underserved communities is not worth keeping vibrant. What kind of thinking goes into the minds of children, brown and black children, who walk or ride to school, are constantly threatened by bullying or possibly becoming a victim of a mass shooting? What kind of thinking goes into the craziness of those who want it available privilege for people to get assault weapons? I watched the State of the Union address, not because I wanted to, but because my wife said it might be good for us to have a little fellowship, so I watched it with my wife. And may I confess to all of the brothers, this was the second time in my whole life that I've ever watched it. First time was Barack Obama, and the second time was a few days ago with Sister Smith. I got upset when our Republican brothers and one sister was being rude to the president, to the point that the new hijacked Speaker of the House, because he did hijack it, I don't care what you say, the new Speaker of the House actually looked at her and said, don't do that. When we get to the point that it's okay for us to disrespect authority, then we're not under any more authority. Where is the solution to some of these dilemmas that affect our daily lives? Paul, over in Romans, when he writes this wonderful treatise to Rome, puts it over in chapter 12, verse number 2. He says, and be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed, here it is, by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is good, what is acceptable, and the perfect will of God. That sums all our texts up in one verse. Lean not to thy own understanding. We must be careful in our thinking. We must be careful about our thinking, and we must be careful of the why of our thinking. Our understanding can be flawed and counterintuitive and problematic. When our thinking is polluted, it affects our actions. Our actions then reflect our intentions. Jesus helped us to understand when they were arguing about what people were taking in their body. Jesus said, it's not what goes in that defiles, it's about what comes out. Because what comes up and comes out is what you was really thinking in the first place. My mother didn't like alcohol. She didn't like alcohol because my mother always said it was called ignorant oil. She said, if you give people enough alcohol, they'll speak their real mind. And let me tell you something, I ain't picking on nobody. If you're sipping, that's your business. Pastor ain't got nothing to do with that. But make sure that your sipping don't make you slip with your lips. Was that clear? Because one thing I've learned about words is that you can't take them back. Even though you can apologize until the hills turn blue and the sky turn red, once it's out in the atmosphere, you can't take it back. So that's why you hear people say, after they said something wrong, if I said something to hurt your feelings, I apologize. No, you said what you wanted to say. The problem is you realize you didn't say it then came out, and you're now responding to how we are responding to what you really said. Nobody want to talk to me, but it's all right. How do we then, Pastor, better inform our thinking that it will help facilitate our lives in such a way that we will live a productive life, learning how not to lean to our own understanding? Here it is. Consider these things. Seek God for insights before you journey for wisdom. I don't know about you, but God will talk back to you if you talk to the Lord. I mean, James tells us if you're seeking wisdom, ask the Lord. He gives it unbridled. In other words, God will give you what you ask for if you're asking God for it. I think we spend too much time asking for stuff and miss the true value of what we need to be asking God for. If you're going to gain some wisdom, in your wisdom, seek the one who knows everything. It just makes sense to me. If God created the world, and since God knows when you were born and when you're going to die, and since God knows whether or not how many hairs you have on your head, whether or not the ones you have or the ones you used to have, since God knows all of that, don't it just make good common sense to ask the Lord for wisdom? And here is the responsibility of the black church. They are expecting us to lead them because they've run out of conventional wisdom and now they need some divine wisdom. Here is what's amazing. Can I help somebody? All the stuff that they said was spooky back in Africa, now they're trying to understand the spirituality of the Afrocentric person. What they call spooky or heresy or wrong was basically their ignorance of not knowing our heritage and our connection to our God. When they came here, because they stole everything they got, they had a problem with the Indians talking about the God of the sun or the sun god. They did not understand that even the Indians who were already here, who were part of the African continent from the beginning, helped them to try to help them to understand we don't worship the sun, but we worship the God who made the sun. What we call sacred, they call idolatry. And what they did not understand is now they're trying to understand why y'all burning sage. Why y'all wearing things like this? Why y'all doing that? Because it seems to work. Because guess what? The most people that had most of the nervous breakdown during the pandemic was not us. See, y'all don't read enough. You got to read widely. More of them committed suicide than us because struggle was not new to us. It just came in a different form. And here is the problem I have with some of our rap artists and music. Stop showing all your stuff to the world because guess what? They're setting you up to cut you down. You better pay attention to what the prophet is saying. You got to watch how successful you are because not only will the empire cut you down, some of us want to cut you down too. I heard Jay-Z put it this way. He can't go back to the old neighborhood because he can't remember who used to be jealous of his success back then, and they really got a problem with his success now. Seek God for wisdom. Consider this. Act on the wisdom God gives you to improve your life. When you ask God for wisdom, you must activate the wisdom by putting in action what God has given you the wisdom to do. You missing me today. Don't ask for nothing and you don't use it properly. Okay, you missing me. You missing me. Okay, let me see. Let me look at. Let me see. If I borrow $500,000 from Brother Waldo, yeah, I'm speaking to bro, and I tell Brother Waldo that I'm going to do what I said I wanted to do with it, I lose credibility with Brother Waldo if I decide to do something else that I did not borrow the money for. Let me help somebody improve their credit. But if I do what I told Brother Waldo I was going to do and then pay him back the $500,000 that I borrowed in the first place to do what I said I was going to do, it makes our relationship better because I've done what I said he has allowed me to do. You cannot expect God to give you wisdom to do what needs to be done and you don't do it. When you ask God to do something, use the wisdom as an opportunity to do what you asked the Lord to do. And guess what? When you need some more, God can trust you with more, because what you did with the last thing, you've already accomplished it. Come here, let me bless somebody. You got to learn how to use the wisdom that God has given you to be successful, so that when you get to your success level, you will remember it was not you, it was the Lord that got you there in the first place. Consider this. Receiving God's wisdom blesses and benefits not only you, but the community around you. Can I say something to us? We got to learn how not to be so selfish. Me, my, I, and what I want, that we don't even let we don't even let the cup overflow, because we too busy trying to control the saucers. I don't like coffee. I don't like coffee, but I like coffee drinks. My godfather used to have what was called a percolating. Anybody remember the percolating hot pot? And he would put his coffee grinds in there and let it percolate. And he would get his non-dairy creamer, his sugar, and he would put it over in his coffee and stir it. And because it was too hot for me to handle, he would let me have what was in the saucer, because whatever was in the saucer was also from the cup. And the problem is, we too busy trying to control the saucer that we won't let the God who wants to overflow us in the cup pour enough in us that it'll bless somebody else. And here's what I'm trying to help somebody to understand. When you pour into the cup, don't you worry about the saucer. You stay in the position to receive from the cup, because the more you receive, God will allow the overflow to bless other people who are connected to you.